Hello and welcome back to Russ's Movie Corner. My name is Russ, and as you can see, I am not sitting in front of my movie corner. Have my How Sharp Is Your Sword shirt on. I do not have a movie next to me because I'm at my girlfriend's place. And judging by the frame around me, we are back, taking down another atheist. Today, back on the chopping block is Vice Rhino and his video, The Bible Proves Jesus' Miracles because it's in the Bible. A bunch of circular reasoning with his only reasoning and claim being that it's trust me, bro. So on the last one, I kind of went through his claim that that Paul never said anything about Jesus' miracles, only preached the resurrection, and even then he didn't really preach that it was a historical event, blah, blah, blah. So I basically went through, Acts, Romans, 1 Corinthians, 2 Corinthians, Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, 1st and 2nd Timothy, and Titus. This is Devlin, by the way. Basically, kind of said that it's he was preaching that this was a historical event, that anyone that's not preaching that historical event is a heretic, okay, and that everybody who doesn't believe in that is doomed for the hot place, okay, and because they're not believing in the one who was sent by God, okay. Paul was a Pharisee of Pharisees, he calls himself, okay? And he had studied both the Greek Septuagint, which is just the Greek version of the Old Testament, and the Hebrew Old Testament, okay? Septuagint being called because Septuagint means 70 scholars, okay? So that was that. And so the point being that this guy does not have a clue what the Bible actually says. He has zero sources. In fact, the only source so far that he attempted to bring up was one article about Tacitus talking about Vespasian, okay? And then it was only one screenshot of one line out of Tacitus's thing, okay, which doesn't help his case considering that Tacitus said a little bit earlier in the actual historical account that he puts that those people don't have any or that the physicians that Vespasian talked to said that, oh, it could be that by, spitting in this guy's eyeballs might remove an obstruction, and that if and by stepping on this guy's hand, it might, it might give him use, okay? And we read that even Christian historians are saying, yeah, Vespasian healed 2 people, and that's it, okay? Supposedly healed, miraculously. 2 people. And Tacitus offers a medical explanation for it. Jesus, on the other hand, all of his miracles were done in plain view of many people, okay, were attested to by many different people in the crowds, recorded by reliable eyewitness sources, which we've already established has been happening, and this guy has no idea what all that evidence is. His only evidence for saying that it doesn't happen is trust me, bro. Okay? And so, honestly, the Vespasian, he's gonna bring up Vespasian again a little ways further into the video here. He's gonna bring up Vespasian a second time, and I'm basically gonna slam him again as, dude, it's been debunked. He wasn't actually doing miracles, okay? And, and even Tacitus gives an alternative explanation, okay? He doesn't, if Tacitus had not included the stuff about the physicians and had just said, okay, Vespasian said, all right, I'll heal you guys. spit in the one man's eyes, stepped on the other man's hand, and they both were healed. It was a complete miracle. Then you'd probably have some way of being able to say, wow, that was kind of crazy. Like, what happened there? But the problem is that we don't see that with Vespasian. Okay? We see a bunch of alternative explanations for Vespasian's miracles. We don't see that with Christ. Okay? We really don't. So, this becomes a problem for this guy because his only proof so far was that Vespasian had claims that were written down by 2 historians. Okay? I have claims written down by 4 people, attested to by multiples. Okay? By multiple people. So, I'm sorry, son, you don't have a leg to stand on. Okay? You really don't. Now, I've put down in the description, I keep updating these because every once in a while I find some new videos and I see some new things, and it's really awesome. There was a guy who was an atheist, okay, kind of like J. Werner Wallace, kind of like Josh McDowell, kind of like some of these other people, and he was a lawyer, okay, and his wife became a Christian, and he was like, oh, I know this is going to become a huge issue for us, this is going to become a big thing. And he goes, sure enough, we came at loggerheads, and, she was saying this, I was saying that. And he goes, to save my marriage, I was going to disprove Christianity. He goes, oh man, if I could just disprove one thing, it would make the whole thing fall apart like a house of cards, and then we go back to normal. And he goes, not only did I start looking into this thing, he goes, those little clown punching bags, or those like punching bags that sit on the floor that have like the little sphere in the bottom, and you punch it, and then it comes back up, and he goes, oh man, he goes, I thought I had the knockout punch. He goes, oh, this didn't happen. Bam! Knockout punch. And he goes, and it would just go, come right back up with a claim, with an answer to my claim. And he goes, and I just couldn't handle it. And he lists off 2 things in there. You can watch the video for the rest of it, but he lists off 2 things that are very important in there. So I'll let you go down and take a look at those to kind of understand what's going on with all of this stuff. Because the point being that when we as Christians, the thing is that this has stood up to scrutiny for years. Okay? If this had been false, it would have been found out by now. Okay? I mean, the atheist is pretty soon going to have to start getting into flat earth levels of cognitive dissonance and mental gymnastics in order to keep their narrative going, because there is so much evidence for Christianity that they can't hand wave it away and claim ignorance anymore. Okay? Because there's just, the evidence is there and it's so overwhelming. And pretty soon we're just going to be able to go, dude, right here. Okay? Here's the evidence you're looking for. And the only thing they're going to be able to say is, well, no, I don't like that evidence. Okay, well, that's your opinion, bro. And that doesn't matter. You can have the opinion that things didn't happen, but honestly, you haven't proven that it hasn't. Okay? No atheist on the planet has ever proven that any of this stuff has never happened. Okay? Most of the time, I hear people say, well, Jesus couldn't have performed miracles because modern medical technology says that we cannot do this. So if we cannot do this, Jesus couldn't have done it. Cool story, bro. But that doesn't prove your case. Because like I said at the beginning of this series, I had LASIK surgery. Jesus healed the blind. He didn't have a LASIK clinic. He didn't bring people into a hut and be like, okay, guys, strap into this chair. We're going to put these little things on your eyes. We're going to make some little slits. We're going to pull back your lenses and look at the center. Don't don't move your eyeball around too much. Just look at that green light in the center. All right, you're done. Here you go. Come back tomorrow. We'll take out the contact bandages and you'll be able to see forever. He didn't have that. So the burden of proof falls on this guy. If he wants to say Jesus could never have healed a blind man, okay, then how could that have happened? Or not have happened? Okay? Find some kind of a non-medical explanation as to how these people could have been seen, because he didn't just, like Emperor Vespasian, go pooey. Oh, look, he can see. It's a miracle. He didn't do that. He healed the blind in various different ways. Okay? There's a ton of different people that got healed of blindness in the Bible in many different ways during Jesus' 3-year ministry. So the burden of proof falls to this guy to look at every single one of those miracles and try to come up with an alternative explanation as to how that could have possibly healed a blind man in some kind of street magician way. Like with Tacitus, where he said, the physicians said, okay, that Tacitus reported that the physicians said that, you know, there could be an obstruction in the guy's eye and he can't see because of that obstruction, and, you know, having water or saliva blowing into his eye could remove the obstruction and make him see. And so Vespasian said, okay, I'll do it. Same thing with the lame. He didn't step on anybody's fingers. He told a lot of those people either rise up and walk, okay, without stepping on them, without doing anything like that. He would literally just tell a paralytic, he was standing like back from the paralytic, and he would just turn to the paralytic and say, rise up and walk, okay? Or he would tell a guy who had like a lame hand, stretch out your hand, and the man's hand stretched out and instantly was healed. Again, this isn't like a leg lengthening trick like Todd White likes to perform, okay, which we'll get into in this one. Trust me. So this is how, and that's what I'm saying. This guy has to come up with alternative explanations, and then he has to come up with some kind of plausible scenario, i.e. sources, okay, to show where something like that has happened in some other culture, place, whatever, to say, here you go. Pointing to one man who has been debunked by history and by the historian who wrote about him at the time that it happened, okay, does not help your case, son. In fact, it actively works against you. So let's jump back in now and let's continue on with this.
When considering the Synoptics as one source and John as another, we have two sources, Mark and John. So no, this is not extremely impressive.
Nope. Again, they're 4 independent sources, son. Okay? Because, again, if you're going to come up with the idea that Matthew and Luke were plagiarizing Mark, your words, not mine, if you're going to come up with that claim, then you need to have some kind of sources to say, this is how we know. Just saying, they're identical, trust me, bro, is not a source. That's your opinion, okay? It's also Aaron Ra's opinion. Aaron Ra's opinion holds no weight because he's never provided a source either. All he does is provide quote-mined crap on his website, which is, I'm guessing, where this guy is quoting from, okay? Because a lot of the stuff that he's quoting from comes directly from Aaron Ra's website, because I've read his website a couple of times, okay, in researching videos and doing certain things, because, yeah, he basically doesn't have a source to back up anything except quote mining people, okay? I did a video on this channel where I debunked every single quote that he tried to bring up on a thing where he was talking about Christians believe, you know, or faith is belief without evidence, and Christians know this, and here's all these quotes from Christians and ex-Christians that tell you that faith is belief. without evidence. When in actuality, all of those sources have nothing to do with that. Okay? Except for one, and that was Dan Barker, who was a former preacher turned atheist, okay, who wanted to make the bold claim that faith is belief without evidence, with zero evidence to back up his claim, which is hilarious to me because it's so hypocritical in the extreme. So, again, no sources for your claim. Do you have any sources to back that up? No. He makes these claims and then moves on with no sources to back it up. You'll notice I have a description box in right down below this video, okay? Every single video in this series has the same exact description with minor changes made, just basically saying, last time we talked about this time we're talking about this. It's setting up the video, okay? But every single source I bring up in this, Dr. Jim's, those websites I showed in the previous video, okay? All of the videos that I'm talking about, J. Werner Wallace video, the short I just mentioned, all of that stuff is down in the description box. Guess what that is? Sources. Okay? I'm bringing up actual sources to show you that I have done the research. I have done some of the things for you, the viewer, so that you don't have to just sit there and try to Google and make sure that I'm doing everything correctly. This guy is getting all of his information from Aaron Ra and Rational Wiki, which has zero sources. Rational Wiki doesn't have a single source to back up any claim it makes, because it can be written by anyone. That's why most people do not use Wikipedia as a source. Most colleges today, if you cite wikipedia.org, they will flunk you out of class. And the reason for that is because anyone can edit Wikipedia. Okay? It is a free, edited online source. Okay? So anyone can make up any claims they want and throw it out there, and no one does the work to check. Now, are there sources on Wikipedia? Yes. But not everyone that goes there to write down things on Wikipedia, okay, cites what they do. And Rational Wiki is 10 times to 100 times worse, depending on the page. Because they will go from maybe one source per, 3 paragraphs to 0 sources on the entire page. Because people are allowed to just spew hatred and vitriol towards anyone they want on that platform, mostly Christians, okay? And the atheists come in and just go, these people are so dumb, these people are so stupid, these people don't know anything. It is literally the worst, okay? And I found out where Professor Dave got most of his information about Ken Hovind, because it was literally parroted almost word for word right off of Rational Wiki. From the diploma mill claims down to he's a charlatan and a con man, right down to all of that stuff. That's the only thing he parroted in that whole video that I did on him a long time back. Okay? It was like the second or third apologetics video I did on this channel. Okay, I did like a Simon Dan, I did like one Simon Dan video, and then I did a second video on something else, and then I did the Professor Dave video on Kent Hovind. Okay, where I addressed his 5 or 7 claims about the Bible that he wanted to ask Kent Hovind about in their debate, which wasn't really a debate. It was mostly Professor Dave yelling and screaming, trying to shout down Kent Hovind. And then basically he went on to that thing and said, he's a greasy pig. And I'm like, says the greasy pig who kept trying to change the subject of the debate and then claim that Kent Hovind was changing the subject. And then, because I actually wanted to find out where do all these claims about Kent Hovind come from. And when I searched Kent Hovind diploma mill, the first link that popped up was the Rational Wiki page. And I read it and I went, that's where they're getting it from. Every single atheist that makes that claim is getting their claim from Rational Wiki. Or they're getting it from another atheist who is getting it from Rational Wiki. Because they're all just parroting each other. Okay? And I'll guarantee you, Aaron Ra is probably one of the people that goes on to Rational Wiki and spews his vitriol. Because a lot of the claims that he makes on his website are on Rational Wiki. Every single one of them. So if he's not doing it, it's one of his superfans that's doing it. Okay? It's absolutely insane. It's not rational. Never has been. All right, let's continue on.
Consider that the miracle of Jesus feeding the 5,000 as well as his resurrection are recorded in all 4 gospel accounts.
That they are.
Yeah, sometimes word for word. Almost like they were copying each other. Matthew did do that thing where he chopped out details that he considered to be unnecessary, but the synoptics are pretty much the exact same story told from the exact same perspective.
Well, then let's read the accounts back to back again, shall we? I mean, we've only done it, twice in this series so far. But, this guy wants to say that they're word for word identical, so let's read them back to back and see if they're word for word identical. I mean, like I said, we've already done this, so honestly, we already know the answer to that. This guy doesn't have a leg to stand on because he's not actually reading the stories. What he's doing is he's saying things and then moving on, hoping that you, the viewer, will not do exactly what I'm doing, which is read the story. Okay? Okay. Starting in verse 13 through verse 21. Now when Jesus heard about John, he withdrew from there in a boat to a secluded place by himself. And when the people heard of this, they followed him on foot from the cities. When he went ashore, he saw a large crowd and felt compassion for them and healed their sick. When it was evening, the disciples came to him and said, "This place is desolate and the hour is already late. So send the crowds away, that they may go into the villages and buy food for themselves." But Jesus said to them, "They do not need to go away. You give them something to eat." They said to him, "We have here only 5 loaves and 2 fish. And he said, "Bring them here to me." Ordering the people to sit down on the grass, he took the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking toward heaven, he blessed the food. Breaking the loaves, he gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the crowds. And they all ate and were satisfied. They picked up what was left over of the broken pieces, 12 basketfuls. There were about 5,000 men who ate, besides women and children. Okay? Now, we go to Mark chapter 6. Okay? Starting in verse 30, going through verse 44. The apostles gathered together with Jesus, and they reported to him all they had done and taught. And he said to them, "Come away by yourselves to a secluded place and rest a while, for there were many people coming and going, and they did not even have time to eat." They went away in a boat to a secluded place by themselves. The people saw them going, and many recognized them, and ran together on foot from all the cities, and got there ahead of them. When Jesus went ashore, he saw a large crowd, and he felt compassion for them, because they were like sheep without a shepherd, and he began to teach them many things. When it was already quite late, his disciples came to him and said, "This place is desolate, and it is already quite late. Send them away, so that they may go into the surrounding countryside and villages and buy themselves something to eat." He answered them, "You give them something to eat." And they said to him, "Shall we go and spend 200 denarii on bread and give them something to eat?" And he said to them, "How many loaves do you have? Go look." And when they found out, they said, 5 and 2 fish. And he commanded them all to sit down by groups on the green grass. And they sat down in groups of hundreds and of 50s. And he took the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up toward heaven, he blessed the food and broke the loaves and gave them, and he kept giving them to the disciples to set before them, the crowd, and he divided up the 2 fish among them all. And they all ate and were satisfied. And they picked up 12 basketfuls of the broken pieces and also the fish. There were 5,000 men who ate the loaves. Okay? Luke 9. Okay? 10 through 17. When the apostles returned, they gave an account to him of all that they had done. Taking them with him, he withdrew to himself to a city called Bethsaida. But the crowds were aware of this and followed him, and welcoming them, he began speaking to them about the kingdom of God and the curing of those who had need of healing. Now the day was ending, and the 12 came and said to him, "Send the crowd away, that they may go into the surrounding villages and countryside and find lodging and get something to eat, for here we are in a desolate place." And he said to them, "You give them something to eat." And they said, "We have no more than 5 loaves and 2 fish, unless perhaps we go and buy food for all these people." For there were about 5,000 men. And he said to his disciples, have them sit down to eat in groups of about 50 each. They did so, and had them all sit down. And then he took 5 loaves and 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he blessed them, broke them, and kept giving them to the disciples to set before the people. And they all ate and were satisfied, and the broken pieces which they had left over were picked up, 12 baskets full. Okay. Now, John chapter 6. Okay. After these things, Jesus went away to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, or Tiberias. A large crowd followed him because they saw the signs which he was performing on those who were sick. Then Jesus went up on the mountainside, and there sat down with his disciples. Now the Passover, the feast of the Jews, was near. Therefore Jesus, lifting up his eyes, and seeing that a large crowd was coming to him, said to Philip, "Where are we to buy bread, so that these may eat?" This he was saying to test them, for he himself knew what he was intending to do. Philip answered him, 200 denarii worth of bread is not sufficient for them, for everyone will to receive a little. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to him, "There is a lad here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, but what are these for so many people?" Jesus said, "Have the people sit down." There was much grass in the place. So the men sat down, in number about 5,000. Jesus then took the loaves, and having given thanks, he distributed to those who were seated, likewise also of the fish as much as they wanted. When they were filled, he said to his disciples, "Gather up the leftover fragments so that nothing will be lost." So they gathered them up and filled 12 baskets with fragments from the 5 barley loaves which were left over by those who had eaten. When the people saw the sign that they had performed, which he had performed, they said, "This is truly the prophet who is to come into the world." Okay, so identical, right? So identical. Oh my gosh. It's almost like you can't even tell which story is which, right? Am I right? I mean, they're just so identical. Oh. Or was it that eyewitnesses saw the same events and wrote down, or were interviewed, per Luke? I mean, they contain similar, yes, but subtly different accounts of the same event. I mean, I bet you'd get the same thing out of Woodstock participants. Okay? People who may have sat closer to the stage versus people that were farther away. Right? I mean, there was probably around about 5,000 people at Woodstock. Correct? Maybe more. I mean, I don't know. I haven't looked up any of the details of Woodstock in a long time, but I mean, I'm sure if you interviewed some people today about Woodstock, okay, which took place about 50 years ago in the 70s, okay, I'm sure you could probably like get different accounts, similar but different, depending on where they were, what they heard, what they saw, you know, different things like that. Okay? Because it just kind of depends on where they are in the crowd. Okay? So, I mean, again, this guy is making a claim and then not even trying to source out any kind of, like, here's how we know these stories are plagiarized, you know, kind of thing. Because, again, how would Bible scholars have been able to tell the difference between Matthew, Mark, and Luke if they were so identical? I mean, wow. And what details did Matthew leave out? I'm still puzzling over that one, because, I mean, are you talking about, like, the people sitting down in groups of hundreds and in groups of 50s? Because Luke just says they sat down in groups of 50s. So was the hundreds more important than the 50s? Like, what is the details that these people are leaving out that you're so convinced that these are fake? Or so convinced that these are plagiarized but then embellished over here or left out over here? It doesn't make any sense, son. You have no legs to stand on because you're not providing a single iota of evidence for anyone to either agree or disagree with you. You're just spewing claims and then moving on and saying, "Trust me, bro," so much. It is. I mean, I'm going to start a new logical fallacy called the trust me bro fallacy, which basically is when it's your opinion and you have zero sources, it's trust me bro. And literally, this guy is the one who's going to start it. So this is the trust me bro fallacy. Okay? I'm starting it as of right now. And so every time we start to say he has no sources, I'm going to say he's committing the trust me bro fallacy.
John, being John, is different. And in this case, as long as we ignore the bit at the end of the story of John where the people see this as a sign and declare that this means he must be the prophet who has come into the world, there are no direct contradictions here. So this could just be the same story from two different authors. And if the gospel accounts were all written by eyewitnesses and were actually independent of each other, this is exactly what we should see throughout. But no.
Which is exactly what we do see throughout the accounts, son. As we saw when we actually read through the accounts. Which you would know if you had actually read the Bible. You know. Because you'll notice that he didn't read the 4 accounts or put the 4 accounts on screen. Okay? Because if he had, okay, he would have automatically just proven his narrative. Okay? So yeah, you failed again, Mr. Better Source, because literally we read the stories back to back. Like, I literally just went from like the first to the second to the third to the fourth story, and we read them back to back. And they are similar, yet different. Okay? Which is what we would expect from eyewitnesses. And again, if he had read the Bible, he would have known that.
We see word-for-word copying in the synoptics, we see direct and irreconcilable contradictions when they differ, and we often see John seemingly going out of his way to contradict certain details of the synoptics, indicating that even if he didn't have access to the texts themselves, he was at least passingly familiar with some of their details.
Like? Do you have any evidence for your assertions here? Any at all? No? Once again, he states false things, then proceeds to move on with 0 sources and to back up these falsehoods. Not helping your case there, Mr. Trust Me Bro Fallacy. Okay? I mean, I'm sensing a pattern developing here. It's been like that since the beginning of the video. This whole trust me bro fallacy is really getting tiresome. Trust me. It's just like, wow, this guy really needs to start reading the Bible, first of all. And second of all, he really needs to start actually sourcing things instead of trying to parrot Aaron Ra.
What's more, the writer's testimony of Jesus' life and miracles is similar enough so as to not be contradictory, but varied enough so that one cannot reasonably conclude that they participated in collusion in order to perpetuate some kind of hoax.
Well, collusion wouldn't be the word I would choose, but they definitely copied off each other.
Nope. Again, read Cold Case Christianity by J. Werner Wallace. Because we see what the witnesses saw. Okay? And that if the story was exactly the same, okay, as this guy's saying it is, then we would know that they colluded to get the story straight. Okay? But you can see how he's pivoted away from his previous statement that Luke and Matthew were exact copies. Okay? After this guy in the Bible video, the World Bible Video thing says they're similar enough not to be contradictory, but varied enough as to rule out collusion. Yeah, you're not fooling anyone, son. Okay? Because, like, okay, look at it this way. If you had 3 people that saw a crime, and you have 3 similar yet different accounts, most of the time, that's enough to get a conviction. Okay? Because as J. Werner Wallace points out in the video that's right down below the video in the description here, he mentions this. He says, He says if a person says that the perp was wearing a navy blue shirt, but they were actually wearing a different colored shirt, would we automatically throw that guy's testimony out because his detail didn't match witness A or witness B or witness C? No, we wouldn't, because his account, he might just be misremembering minor details, but if we can reconcile the major events, then that's how we know that these are eyewitness testimonies. He goes, now, if they all come in and they sit down and they make the same exact story, word for word, exact copies, then we would know that they were telling, with maybe a minor difference here, minor difference there, we would know they were colluded. We know they colluded. Either someone sat them all in a room, told them what to say, or like they all talked after the event to get their story straight, which is not what you want in an eyewitness statement. Because if they're all telling the exact same story, they're no longer eyewitnesses. They're being told what they saw. Okay? That's the difference, son. And that's where you're wrong, Vice Rhino. Okay? Is you can't have that. Making sense now? I hope it is. And you can go down and watch that J. Werner Wallace video, and he's basically saying what I've been saying throughout my whole entire time on this channel. You have eyewitness statements that are different enough. It's exactly what this guy from the World Bible Video guy is saying. Okay, they're similar enough not to be contradictory, yet varied enough as to rule out collusion. Okay? And we just saw that in the story of the feeding of the 5,000. Okay? We see that in the story of Jairus' daughter. We see that in the stories of a lot of the healings. Okay? The healings of blind men and the lame and all of that kind of stuff. Like there's the story where they go to the house and, you know, they literally have to dig through and they drop the guy in, okay, in front of Jesus, and he looks up at the guys and says, wow, he saw their great faith to get the man to Jesus to heal him. He says to the man, your son, your sins are forgiven. And the people, the Pharisees, are like, how dare you? And he's like, no, you don't understand. Is it, to show you that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins, rise up, take up your mat and walk. And the guy literally gets up in full view of the entire house of people, picks up his mat and walks out. In full view of people. And people are saying, wow, God has given such authority to men. This is a great thing we've witnessed. I'm sure those are statements that were made by people in the crowd that was written down by the people, or in the case of Luke, he was transcribing what some of the guys were saying, and he was, is that what, okay. Because he probably was interviewing a different person than Peter, and he heard one of the disciples in the crowd probably heard a person say that. Because we see in Luke and we see in Mark, when they're talking about that same healing, okay, we see two different lines. And that's probably because Peter heard someone say one line, and one of the other disciples heard one of the other lines, and when Luke was interviewing him, he wrote that line down. Okay? So, yeah, it's one of those things where this guy really doesn't understand what exactly is going on here. Okay? And that becomes a problem because he's making these claims with zero evidence and again, trust me bro fallacy, okay? He's making all of these claims and then moving on without providing a single source, except trust me bro, which is a logical fallacy.
That is not in dispute, unless you want to disagree with the vast majority of biblical scholars, which, come to think of it, you just might, because I'm pretty sure the World Video Bible School is of the opinion that the Gospels were actually written by the people whose names are on them, and that they are eyewitness accounts. They are most definitely not, nor do they ever claim to be.
Okay. So, you're saying that Wes Huff, Philip Comfort, Darmaid McCullough, and Bart Ehrman are all wrong. Or that they don't believe that Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John were written by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. I can guarantee you they do believe that, son. Okay? Even Bart Ehrman says that the four Gospels were likely written by the people who have their names on it, because it is highly unlikely in that day and age that they would have used Mark and Luke, two no-name people, to put a gospel out. Because in the Gnostic Gospels, we see the exact opposite. People were using Philip, Thomas, Bartholomew, Barnabas. They were using the names of the apostles. So they wouldn't have used John Mark. They would have used Peter. They would have used Paul. Or Thomas. Or somebody else. If they were writing these things. Okay? If it weren't these people writing them, they wouldn't have put those names on it. And also the fact that we have attestations from the early church fathers saying that these are the authors. So again, I ask you, Mr. Better Sourced, do you have any evidence to back up your claim that these were written by anonymous sources beyond your trust me bro fallacy? Let's see.
Luke even flat out states in the opening that he is compiling an account based on several different sources.
Nope. Trust me, bro, fallacy it is. And yes, Luke does claim that. Okay? Because, again, if you actually bother to actually read the beginning of Luke, because he doesn't, because, again, it would destroy his narrative. Inasmuch as many have undertaken to complete an account of the things accomplished among us, just as they were handed down to us by those who from the beginning were eyewitnesses and servants of the word. Funny that he's using the exact same wording as John. Huh. It seemed fitting for me as well, having investigated everything carefully from the beginning, to write it out for you in consecutive order, most excellent Theophilus, so that you may know the exact truth about the things you have been taught. Oh! I'm sorry. What were you lying? Mr. Trust Me Bro fallacy? Because here's the point. This is why I say Luke was talking to the disciples that were still alive at the time he was doing this. Because he's compiling this gospel, and if you bothered to actually read the beginning of Acts, which, again, you haven't because it would totally destroy your narrative, okay, because they were written by the same person. The first account I composed, Theophilus, about all that Jesus began to do and teach, until the day when he was taken up to heaven, after he had, by the Holy Spirit, given orders to the apostles whom he had chosen. To these he also presented himself alive after his suffering, by many convincing proofs, appearing to them over a period of 40 days, and speaking of things concerning the kingdom of God. Gathering them together, he commanded them not to leave Jerusalem, but to wait for what the Father had promised, which, he said, you heard from me. For John baptized you with water, but you will be baptized with the Holy Spirit not many days from now. So when they had come together, they were asking him, saying, Lord, is it at this time you are restoring the kingdom to Israel? He said to them, it is not for you to know the times or epochs in which the Father has fixed by his own authority, but you will receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you, and you shall be my witnesses in both Jerusalem and in Judea and Samaria and even to the remotest parts of earth. And then he proceeds to go up into heaven. So he literally starts the second account by recapping the end of his first account, which is something you would expect someone who's writing a follow-up to do if you're writing a historical thing. Okay? So yes, Luke was compiling his account because Paul was in prison in Rome. Okay? And Luke traveled back to Judea and to some of the places where some of the Jews were living at the time, okay, and spent time compiling interviews and reconciling those interviews into his gospel, which is why it sounds very similar to Matthew and Mark, because he's interviewing all the other people. Again, John's gospel was written because he was trying to answer heretics. And as we've established, Jesus never hid his divinity from anyone. Okay? John is playing the divinity card hard in his gospel to battle against the heretics who were just saying Jesus is just a man. Again, see in Dr. Jim's, okay, let me grab this here real fast. I'm gonna flip to John because that one is where it is. So basically, you want to, let me see here. Nope, that's Luke. Where did John go? There it is. It's right there. Okay. That's the wrong one. That one was Luke. Okay. So Tertullian, if you go to John, okay, go down to the links in the description. Okay? So after I get done saying this, okay, you're going to pause this video, you're going to go down, you're going to click on, you'll see 4 links. You'll see church fathers in Matthew, church fathers in Mark, church fathers in Luke, church fathers in John. You're going to click on church fathers in John. Then you're going to scroll down the page. Okay? The first person you're going to look at is Irenaeus. Okay? Irenaeus will be about a third of the way down the page. Circa 115 to 202. Okay? He has a book called Against Heresies. Okay? You're going to read through that. Then you're going to skip down you're going to skip over Clement of Alexandria. You're going to go to Tertullian, because he made 2 books against heresies. Okay? One is against Praxeus 21 to 26, which names John and analyzes the gospel. He also says in a discussion on the apostles, Prescriptions Against Heretics 22, that John was the disciple whom Jesus loved, who leaned on Jesus' chest, referencing John 13, 22 through 25, and whom Jesus commended to his mother in John 19, 25 to 27. In the same work, he quotes from John in the context of Old Testament scriptures, equating the two, 3 and 8. See also Against Hermogenes 45, Against Praxeus 7, 9, 12, 13, 17, 19, and on the resurrection of the flesh 18. He also wrote a book called Against Marcion, who was a heretic himself. Okay? And he says in that one, you can read along with me, the same authority the apostolic churches will afford evidence to the other gospels also, which we possess equally through their means, and according to their usage. I mean the gospels of John and Matthew. Willis that which Mark published may be affirmed to be Peter's, whose interpreter Mark was. For even Luke's form of the gospel men usually ascribe to Paul. And it may well seem that the works which disciples publish belong to their masters. Okay? Then, you're going to go down just below Eusebius, and you're going to see rivals to traditional Christianity. First one there is Marcion, the same one that Tertullian was writing against. It seems to assume that John the Apostle wrote the 4th Gospel. That is a fair deduction from the anti-Marcionite prologue to John, despite factual errors in that brief text. The link has a translation of the text from Westcott, a very prominent scholar from an earlier generation, but I cannot vouch for the web writer's comments. Okay? And then, Heracleon, down below Marcion, flourished around 175. He was a disciple of Valenius. Valenians, okay, those were heretics. Those were people who did not believe in the divinity. It says at the end of the 2nd century or into the 3rd, okay, they're talking about after 175 to early 200s, okay, he wrote a commentary on the Gospel of John. In a few places, In his own commentary on John, Origen wrote a refutation of it. It is true that Heracleon found in the Gospel some concepts that suited his need. Nevertheless, his commentary tacitly testifies to the influence and authority of John. Origen, Commentary on John, 2.8 and 15, 6.2, 8, 12, 13, 15, 23, 24, and 38. LibriVox shows 5 in bar, 10.9, 14, 19, 21, and 22, and LibriVox 6. Tertullian's Against the Valentians and Against Heresies, 1.8 and 1.9. The Valentians twist John. Funny that. Basilides Against Heresies, 2.2.3 and 2.35 refers to Basilides by name in 2.28.6. And so we see that even the heretics, okay, of the time period were trying to twist Jesus into something he wasn't, which is why the Gnostic Gospels were written, because they were trying to say that Jesus was just a man who had the power of God instead of God incarnate. Okay? And that's the point, okay? So, Luke's sources here are not in doubt, because he clearly states that these were men who walked, talked, lived, ate, breathed, and saw Jesus after his death. He is explicit in that. So is John. John is explicit in his gospel at the very end, saying, we're doing this to show you who this man is. That he was not an ordinary human being like you're professing. Okay? So, let's do something completely different now. Okay? We're going to switch gears just a little bit. We're going to leave the realm of the Bible, and we're going to talk about World War II. Okay? Stephen Ambrose wrote the book Band of Brothers. Who here knows Band of Brothers? Okay? I haven't actually read the book, but I've seen the miniseries. It was damn awesome. I love it to death. I'm sure I would love the book too. Okay? Now, he interviewed the members of Easy Company that were still alive at that time. Okay? This was in 1992. Okay? So that was like 47 years after the end of World War II. Okay? So, if you want to say that you cannot trust people decades after to remember events that happened to them 50 years before, I call your bullshit. I do. Okay? So, he interviewed the members of Easy Company of the 101st Airborne Division some 47 years after World War II closed. Right? Okay, we all in agreement in that. Okay? Book came out in 1992. Likely a few years before that, he was going around interviewing them. So probably around 1989, 1990. Okay? He interviewed all these guys. He wrote all that stuff down. He reconciled all the stories, put it in the book, and then published the book in 1992. Okay? The European theater was done in May of 1995. Okay? The Japanese war, the official end of the war was after the Japanese surrender in August of 1945. But we know that the European theater in 1945 closed in May. Okay? And that's when Easy Company's story kind of stopped. Ambrose wrote the book in 1992, so it follows that he took him a year or two to track down the surviving members of Easy Company and interview them. Right? That's why I said he probably started in about 1989, 88, 89, started interviewing the members, and then it probably took him about a year to get the manuscript together. Okay? And then he had to publish it. The surviving members of Easy Company, okay, so then compiled all his notes into chapters, reconciling the different reports about the various battles, doubtless because some of them remembered the battles a little differently than others. Okay? Some of them may not even have been present. They may have heard the other members talking about it, so they were just recollecting what they heard from those members. Okay? So, We're seeing the same thing in Luke, which is why it is so similar to Peter and Matthew in terms of Mark and Matthew, okay? So, we have those early church fathers as well. Some of them were alive, some of whom were alive, while the Gospels were being written in the case of Papias and Polycarp. Okay, again, look at Dr. Jim's, okay, because Papias and Polycarp, okay, actually do write a lot from the four Gospels. And they attest to the four Gospels. And Irenaeus, who was a disciple of Polycarp's, attests that those are the four Gospel authors. Okay? So, again, this guy, not the World Video Bible School, Vice Rhino, still hasn't provided a single source to back up his claims here. Okay? I mean, I've lost track of the amount of fails this guy's racked up. Oh, man. I mean, it's bad. I mean, the trust me bro fallacy is just off the charts. I cannot believe how bad the trust me bro fallacy is. Okay? Let's do one more and then we'll call it an episode. Jeez. Ay, ay, ay.
Truly, the fact that multiple writers attest to the factuality of Jesus' miracles should not be taken lightly.
It isn't. But it also should not be taken lightly that we have clear evidence that none of these writers were eyewitnesses, and that several of them copied from each other.
Okay. Again, with this claim of anonymous authors and no sources. Except the trust me bro fallacy. Do you have any sources to back up your claim that these were not written by eyewitnesses? No, you do not. Because we have historical writings attesting to the gospel authors. And like I said, the actual biblical scholars out there vehemently disagree with you and agree with me because I've read them. And I've heard them speak. I did an entire video series on comments on comments. I did a sub-series of that, like 2 or 3 videos of it, literally debunking a guy who tried the same tactic. He would take Bible scholars, and because those Bible scholars didn't say that we were 100% certain that these guys did it, but we were like 85 to 90% certain, he took that to mean they didn't write it. And I said, and like literally, I was reading through, because he said this about Luke Acts, and Darmaid McCullough, I believe it was, I know he wrote like several books, but I want to say he wrote one on like Luke Acts, and like literally in the intro to it, he literally says, we're not 100% certain that Luke wrote Luke Acts, but we are, and it literally has like a big but, and then it says, but we are fairly certain about, and then he puts in parentheses, about 85% to 85 to 90% that Luke wrote Luke Acts. So he literally, this guy literally quote mined one statement that said we're not 100% sure. Took that as an absolute certainty that Luke did not write Acts. Completely ignored the rest of the book that he was referencing, okay? Threw that all out and went, haha, we know they didn't write it. I went, did you bother to read the rest of the sentence, son? Because he literally sat there and said, this is what we did. He had like 5 different guys. He tried to claim that he had 5 different PhDs. This guy in my comment section tried to claim that he had 5 PhDs backing him up. Okay? Including Bart Ehrman. Okay? Saying that, oh, well, we know that these guys didn't write it. And I'm like, okay, you can have Bart Ehrman because he's an atheist. Okay? He's still pretty sure that the gospel authors are the gospel authors. Okay? He doesn't say that that's 100% certainty, but he knows that they were written by 4 separate people. Okay? They were not copies of copies of copies. Okay? Because they all have their own voice. That's what textual criticism does. Okay? So, yeah. I mean, it's absolutely stupid, you know? It's just, I mean, yeah, because like literally all this guy has is parroting Aaron Ra's claims with zero evidence. So I want to ask you a very, very important question right now, Vice Rhino. Okay? Where is your evidence for your claims, son? Where? Where is it? Do you have any? I'm beginning to think no, because we're 23 minutes into this video. Right now. Okay, we are 23 minutes into this video. And this guy hasn't brought up a single flippin' source to back up his claim. Not one. I have a description box filled to the brim with sources. You can check my sources, okay? And see if what I'm saying is the truth or not. That's why I asked you to read along with me with the Dr. Jims. So that you can see that I'm not just whistling Dixie like this guy is, okay? That I'm actually trying to give you how we know. That we're not just going, trust me, bro. Like this guy. It is absolutely asinine to think that this guy has any credibility whatsoever. I remember I started watching this video. I was thinking, oh, I'll just throw in some stuff. I have the Dr. Jims. I have some different things. I got about 5 minutes into it, and I lost track of the number of logical fallacies and false claims and zero evidence. And I went, holy crap, I need to sit down and actually write out like something so that I can make sure that when I put together the description box, I back up all my sources because I need to show people that it's like, hey, even a guy who's not a Bible scholar can do some basic freaking research to try to back up his claims. Because I tell people, you can look up online, okay? You can look up the claims that I'm making. You can go down into the description box and you can do that. And then go search around. Find some different things. Okay? Because the funny thing is, we would not have the last video that I put down. I'm going to say this one last thing and then we'll call it an episode. Okay? We would not have guys like J. Werner Wallace. Okay? Josh McDowell. And the guy that's in the description box below, who was a former atheist turned Christian, if the evidence wasn't there. Because all three of them were atheists. Vehement atheists, by the way. Okay? Never churchgoers. As far as I know, Josh McDowell was never a churchgoer as a kid. As far as I know. He may have been, I don't know. J. Werner Wallace was an atheist who was a homicide detective. And as far as I know, I don't know that he went. Again, I don't know much about these guys' stories, okay, about going to church, about doing all this kind of stuff. I don't know that they went to church as a kid and then maybe became an atheist later on. I don't know much about their stories. I just know that they were atheists and then they became Christians because the volume of evidence was so overwhelming that they had no other recourse logically but to start to believe in the Bible. Because and Jesus and his claims, because there's an overwhelming amount of evidence in favor of the Bible. Evidence that this guy is willingly ignorant of. Okay? And this guy is not bringing up a single source. Again, we're 23 minutes in. Not one. Okay? And I've been through the other 12 minutes of this video. And he never brings up a source outside of that one little tiny excerpt from Tacitus, which I don't necessarily consider to be a source in his favor. It's more likely he just kind of stumbled across it when he searched Vespasian and he probably saw something and went, oh, well, see, this is kind of similar to the claims that people make about the Bible. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to, clip this and I'm going to put it in my video and that'll show those Christians I'm better source than the Bible. No, you're not, son. Because I have 2 independent sources that disprove your claim about Vespasian. Because you're claiming, oh, Vespasian healed all these people. Tacitus himself said he didn't actually miraculously heal these people because his physicians offered alternative explanations. So good luck with that, bro. Okay? So no, I don't consider that to be a source in his favor because he's just trying to find something that he can use as a slam against Christians. That's not a source. That's a narrative, okay? That's him trying to craft a narrative, so he's quote mining from an ancient document off of a website and pasting it into the video and going, ha, there. That's not a source, bro. That's a narrative. The trust me bro fallacy is strong with this one. It is off the charts. Way more than it has been with any other person that I've covered on this channel, with the exception of maybe Aaron Ra. It's the reason why I don't cover Matt Dillahunty. He's like the king of trust me bro fallacies. He makes wild claims, and then when people try to fact check him on those claims, he shouts them down to the point where, I mean, it's like, this is one of the reasons why, like, people were always telling me, oh, you should call in to Matt Dillahunty's show, and I said, well, I'm not that psychotic, because, like, Matt Dillahunty, when he makes a claim, and then the Christian starts to counter said claim, when that Christian starts to tell the truth about the claim and starts to fact check him in real time, he will quickly hang up on them. He will shout them down, and when that doesn't work, he will hang up on them and then say, these Christians are so stupid. They don't know anything. Oh, they're so dumb. And I thought, there is no point to debating a guy like Matt Dillahunty. Ever. In fact, I think Nate Sala from Wise Disciple said it best. Okay? No serious Christian should ever debate Matt Dillahunty. Okay? He was a debate teacher. He was an atheist. Okay? Became a Christian, became a pastor, and now he has his channel where he's doing, where he's doing all of this different stuff. Okay? Where he tries to look at, like, debates, and he looks at, like, theological problems. He looks at TikTok, atheist TikTok, all that kind of stuff. And he tries to give people good, sound theological advice. And I recommend his channel 100% wholeheartedly. Okay? The biggest thing that I think that people need to know about modern pop atheism is that 99% of it is 2 things. Either I'm right, you're wrong, I win, which is not an argument, or trust me, bro, which is why I'm labeling it the trust me, bro fallacy. Okay? Because, again, this guy hasn't brought up a single source that has backed up any single claim he's made in any recognizable fashion. Okay? There's no links in his description. There's no things on the screen that show any kind of a source where he gets his information. Nothing. Okay? I mean, at least with Aaron Ra, when he puts up a quote, he'll try to attribute it to somebody so that at least you can look it up. Okay? I mean, that's how I was able to kind of fact check him, because he put up a bunch of quotes and then he put the person's name below them. And I basically just went in and just kind of shattered that notion Okay? Because like I said, the only one who actually said faith is believing without evidence was Dan Barker. Because as we showed, the quote from Kirk Cameron at the bottom of the page, they talk about, oh, you Christians quote mine all the time. He was the king of quote mining. Because literally, in this debate that Kirk Cameron and Ray Comfort were having with a couple of atheists on a show, it was like about a 30 or 40-minute debate. I actually showed the whole debate, okay, or, well, a good chunk of it, and then I actually showed probably about, like, 2 minutes either side of that quote and said, there's the quote. Because Kirk Cameron was in his closing statement, and he was essentially saying the whole belief is, or faith is belief without evidence. He was saying it in the context of slamming the atheists across from him and out in the audience. Okay? He was saying, that's what y'all believe. Because y'all don't have enough evidence in your theory to back up your theory, but us here, we have evidence to back up the Bible. Archaeology, we have historicity, we have anthropology, we have things that back up our faith, so our faith is not blind. And that's literally what he was saying, and it was so funny to watch. Okay? So smash that like button, hit subscribe. Smash that like button, hit subscribe, drop a comment below. Let me know what you think of this video series so far. I believe this is the end of part 7. And I've got not many pages left, but we're getting there, okay? So I'm going to try to get these uploaded as quickly as I possibly can. I'm in Kansas now for about another 6 days as of filming this. Actually, 5 days as of filming this. And then I'm going to be back in Washington. And so I'll probably finish up this series. I'll have to see where I'm at with this series because I don't want to overload my computer too much. And I'm also doing some things for the Sasquatch and Sunflower YouTube channel. So if you haven't yet, run over there and subscribe. We will have some videos coming out very, very soon. I'm sorry that we haven't. My girlfriend's been busy. I've been busy. We're both trying to work on videos for that channel. I'm trying to work on videos for this channel. So we both just have to kind of get these videos out there. We're going to try to get a regular schedule going. I have something coming up in October, and hopefully, if everything goes well, by the end of the year, okay, beginning of 2026, I'm hoping to be able to move down here to Kansas to be closer to my girlfriend and to have some certain things happen in our lives, and hopefully